All right. Happy race day, everybody. It is NASCAR throwback weekend at Darlington Raceway. You also got the Miami F1 race going on at the same time. So great day for racing, but hopefully you have two screens because I think they're going to be on at the same time, which should be interesting to look at the TV ratings and viewership once it's all said and done. But let's just go over a quick final picks video to the initial preview. This is going to be going over, some of the drivers that we like, some of the lineup approaches that we want to take coming into the slate this afternoon. So, pretty interesting slate. It's interesting when you look at the Truck Series and you looked at the Xfinity Series and now the Cup Series. There's a lot of plays up front that look like dominator plays, and there's a lot of plays in the back that look like slam dunk place differential plays, and it's trying to find the right balance between the two. I think of having a chance of cashing in the tournaments. But looking at the top range here from Larson down to Byron, you have a mix, right? You have a mix of drivers starting up front who could potentially be dominator plays, and then you also have some place differential plays in there as well. Larson's interesting. He's consistently been, one of the most expensive drivers every single week. Hasn't always been the slam dunk dominator play. We haven't really seen him run away with a race like we did last year. It's not that he's running bad. He's just, when you're paying all that money for a driver, you really want him to get out front, lead you laps, run fast laps. And he hasn't been doing that. So it's a little bit of a concern. Although if you look at practice times and where he's starting, he starts on the front row. It looks like he has a really good long run car, and we know that Larson runs really well at Darlington. He's one of those drivers who can ride the wall, and this is a place that rewards you for being able to do that well. So I think Larson's going to carry a lot of ownership. Our only fear is if he loses the early jump to Logano or, fades back early on in the race. We don't know if he'll be able to get back up there to the front, but especially with the price tag that you're paying. But we do like Larson quite a bit. We only have him as medium there just because I think of all the ownership he's going to get in the price tag you're paying to plug him in. However, if you're building multiple lines, we're still going to have a nice chunk of Larson ownership. Elliott is going to be extremely popular for a different reason. He wrecked his car in practice, so he's going to the Hendrick Motorsports backup car. Same thing that happened to William Byron, last week at Dover. Byron was running decently well, and then I don't know if it was just pit strategy or when that caution came out, but then kind of got stuck, deeper in the field and wasn't really able to recover. But before that, Byron was running up in the top 10, top 12, top 8. So we know the backup car has speed, and it doesn't take much for Elliott to pay off that price tag. The only problem is he's very expensive. If you are plugging in Elliott, most likely you're sacrificing a dominator play. If you're playing cash games, plug him in. Don't even forget about it. Truex, never know what to do with Truex. He his practice times looked awful. He didn't. His practice times last week at Dover didn't look very good either. And he came out and he was fast. Was running up front. Starts a little bit closer to the front this weekend. We know Truex runs well here, so definitely more of a GPP option. I would say if you're banking on an early dominator, going with the Larson or the Logano route is probably more likely. But I think if you're building multiple lines, I think Truex is a guy who might come in a little bit under-owned, especially when you look at the guys that he's priced around. Denny Hamlin had an issue in qualifying. It was the diffuser, the body part that's underneath the car. It sounds like they were able to repair it, and it wasn't a internal engine problem, which they originally thought, which is good. So I think he's going to have to drop to the rear. I like Hamlin as a nice pivot, I guess, if you're fading Elliott and or Harvick, who we'll talk about a little bit later on the slate. But I think Hamlin will come in the lowest owned of the three and has some pretty good upside. We know Hamlin runs well here and he's really good at managing his tires. So really high, interested in Hamlin, interested in Elliott. And then it's just trying to, figure out, okay, between the two of them, if you're playing tournaments, what dominator do you really want in your lineup? Do you want to go Larson? Do you want to go Truex? Um, I'd say Byron's probably my fifth interest of at least the top range. Probably the guy I'm going to get to the least out of here, but I don't want to eliminate him. Really cool paint scheme on the 2400 car this weekend, but his practice times didn't look too good. I can see him kind of running in the top 10 all day. Our only fear is if you're paying that much money, it's just going to be hard for him to outscore the guys that he's priced around. When you look at Hamlin's upside, Elliott's upside, Larson's likelihood of getting out front and dominating, Truex starts a little bit closer to the front. Byron just kind of looks a little bit stuck there in ninth place. So not going to eliminate him. Going to have a little bit of ownership, but he would probably be the guy I'm getting to the least of the 10K range. 9K range, like a lot of guys in here for a little bit of different reasons. I would say a lot of the 9K range are more dominator plays. I think Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain are both excellent tournament plays. Doesn't matter where we go. Ross Chastain is showing speed every single week. Doesn't matter if it's a short track, a road course, intermediate, super speedway. Some way, somehow he's getting out front. He's leading laps. He's picking up fast laps. So I really like the value that Ross Chastain gets. I still think he should be priced, more expensive. It's like Kyle Busch a lot as well. So I really like Busch and Chastain as tournament GPP, dominator plays. I don't think I'm really going to get to Bowman or Blaney too much. Like I said, I still have medium interest in these guys just because I think literally anyone from like Kevin Harvick all the way up has, you can make an argument for playing them. And we've seen that with the Cup Series this year too, that you can get a lot of value out of these drivers. It's not always so straightforward of, oh, it's going to be this guy or that guy. You can kind of see which way we're going, based on the high interest levels. But once you get down to Logano, this is a really interesting, kind of narrative that you have to play out. Like Logano isn't not necessarily known to be the best Darlington driver. You're looking at his practice times. I mean, this car is fast, but it's fast on the short run. You look at Larson, and Larson is fast on the long run. So I would imagine there's going to be a competition caution today with how many tires we saw blow and people get into trouble in practice. I think that hurts Logano's upside just because they're going to re-rack the field, and we know the restarts are the best opportunity, and or coming down pit road are the best opportunities to pass. I do think he's going to get the early jump. I do think he's going to lead, probably the first 25, 30 laps, when that competition caution comes out. My only fear is if it does go green longer, are we going to see, a driver like Larson who has a better long run car get in front of him, and then will we see Logano fall back? Logano really struggled last week at Dover, which is a really big concern, especially when you're trying to figure out like how they're going to run this week. And I will say his practice times back him up. And he looks fast. I mean, he backed it up in qualifying. It's really cheap too. So I like Logano quite a bit as being an early dominator. Just be interesting to see, how he competes with Larson. But Larson is significantly more expensive. So you can get another kind of top tier play in your lineup if you're going with Logano. And if you're plugging in Larson, you're kind of sacrificing one of those top tier plays. I think both of them will carry a lot of ownership. Love Reddick. Reddick, when you think of Darlington, you think of Larson, you think of Reddick. Reddick has shown good speed. He didn't show good speed, unfortunately, last week at Dover, but he's got the practice data to back him up. He's got qualifying, did well in both of those. And I can see him picking up a lot of fast laps, and I like the price tag that you get. Kevin Harvick, he's super cheap, 30, he starts 35th. He's almost like the free square play, I would say, this weekend. I think you should just plug him in and kind of build around him. But if you are building multiple lines, he's going to carry a lot of ownership. So maybe you build a couple of lines without Harvick, and just in case he does have trouble. But Harvick can't lose you any points. He's only going to help your line. Dillon, Bell, and Briscoe, more GPP plays, I would say. Bell is a really interesting early lap leader, narrative play. The JGR cars look really fast this weekend, and he's significantly cheaper than all of them. The only problem is he starts third. So if he can just maintain, his running spot, maybe pick up some fast laps, get out front, lead some laps, I think he's going to be a lower owned, interesting play. Briscoe, I think he's kind of going to get stuck. Same with Austin Dillon. I think they're going to kind of ride around where they start all day. So I might change some of these ownerships, and you'll see I'll post it on Twitter. It's at Fast Cars FM. Did a quick initial pass through really late last night. So I'll tweak some of these probably a little bit. Keselowski, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a cash games play just because of where he starts. Really like Suarez. We've seen the speed that the Trackhouse cars have been bringing. We've seen the speed that Ross Chastain has. You got to assume that at some point, it's going to carry over to the other Trackhouse car. He showed some good practice times as well. Really, really nice price tag. Pretty easy to fit into lines. Don't think I'm going to get to Eric Jones or Eric Almirola today. Kurt Busch is a very, very aggressive GPP play. Maybe have like 2 to 5% ownership if you're trying to just be super aggressive. Really like Austin Cindric. Showed really good times in practice and kind of starts right in the middle of the field. Pretty cheap to get into lines. Not really going to get to Buescher. Stenhouse is always a worry. He hasn't looked like a good play at all this season. However, he did have a great run last week at Dover. And if you look at his practice times, it suggests that he will have a decent car again this weekend. If you're using Dover as a comparison to Darlington, that only makes you feel more confident about Stenhouse. But I think a lot of people will be going to Stenhouse. So, maybe you want to pivot a little bit more aggressively and plug in like Bubba Wallace. Starts kind of, in the mid pack, could go either way. But we've seen how fast the JGR cars are at the intermediate tracks. And we know how closely the 23XI cars are to the JGR cars. So he's an interesting tournament play. Not really going to get to Cole Custer or Daniel Hemrick. And when you talk about the punt plays, I think Justin Haley offers you a lot of upside. He starts deeper in the field. He's pretty cheap. Showed decent practice time. So we think he can easily, compete for a top 20. And then I think Corey LaJoie is going to be the go-to value play. When you look at the guys that he's priced around and where he starts, it's relatively safe. We know this car has, top 25, top 20 upside if things get crazy or if he gets lucky on pitch strategies or when the cautions come out. And if you really want to go, balls to the wall, I'd have to check Twitter because I know the BJ McLeod car only ran like one lap in practice, was completely off pace, was working on the car, wasn't able to take a qualifying lap, but they start DFL. So assuming that they fix this car and assuming we see more tire issues in drivers, getting up into the wall and wrecking out. And, we see a lot of cautions in this race. Like McLeod could be just a pure attrition play where, he's going multiple laps down, but, slowly but surely when these cautions come out and these drivers are wrecking and there's mechanical failures, McLeod works his way all the way up and he finishes 30th or 29th or 28th or something. And it allows you to stack, some of the really attractive place differential plays and or dominator plays. So I'm not going to have a ton of McLeod, but, if you need an ugly punt and you're trying to get a little bit different, don't be afraid to plug them in, but might not be a bad idea to check their Twitter page. So I'll update some of these interests real quick. I'll throw them up on Twitter. If you guys want access to it, it's at Fast Cars FM. But that's going to do it for the Darlington weekend. Best of luck if you are playing the slate today and if you're playing the F1 slate. Thanks again for all the support. We had a ton of growth last weekend with new subscribers. We're on our way to up to 500. That's kind of the next milestone that we have. So if this has been helpful to you in any of the videos this weekend anyway, all we ask is hitting that subscription button. But yeah, that'll do it. So best of luck, guys, and see you next week.